Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans, for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out all the latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe. Before I introduce my guests for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the podcast. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand. And for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest, joining me tonight is Alex Anderson. Alex, how's things?
Weird, I'm stunned, just kind of flabbergasted. I don't really know how to process it all. It's just all happened so quickly. And I am, of course, talking about the news that I've just discovered off air that you're a married man now.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Newly married. That's, nothing else happening in the world of
kept that dark.
Yeah.
So the Gersnet followers should know that Brian is now. What we're talking about, the fact that by June Rangers might be under new ownership, but you are already. That's you totally owned now already, mate. You're going to find out what it's all about. No, official on-air congratulations to yourself and your other half there, Brian. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. So hopefully it's been a week of good news, eh?
Yeah, it seems that way. There's been plenty of news the kind of latter half of the week. It got to Tuesday and I was thinking, what are we going to talk about in the podcast? I'm afraid there's not much happening. The domestic games are a bit kind of damp squibby now with the way the league's gone, and then all of a sudden everything seemed to happen all at once. So let's get into it. So first of all, the big news, the kind of main news this week, obviously, talks of takeovers at Ibrox. I think it's 49ers Enterprise, the kind of consortium that's involved in San Francisco 49ers and Leeds potentially taking over. So just first of all, what's your take on it? Is this potentially a positive move?
Potentially, absolutely, yeah. It really is. But I don't know about yourself. I don't know. Season ticket wise, everybody out there that's listening, I don't see the people that I sit around. I sit next to Ibrox, the season ticket seats. You get to know them really well, and that, but I don't do away games. So can I get back to your seats to catch up and what's been happening? And you'll be absorbed. I'll be a few comments when you first meet up again. Oh God, what about that? At Tynecastle last week or whatever. We still haven't really absorbed what happened against Queen's Park. Of course, there was a few of the folks sitting about me had to kind of hold back for getting on the park and assaulting various vendors' employees. So with that, but it's usually just a wee one-liner. But I don't know what we're going to do anymore. It's just going to be like, there was Tynecastle, there was Patrick Stewart coming out. There was that thing about the shares. That was going to be interesting enough. The 3.6 million in shares that get whatever it is you do with shares. I'm not a business person, but they were like 20 pence each, and that was a thing. And I thought, I wonder what's going on there. That's quite subtle. And then it was bang, razzmatazz, 49ers, San Francisco 49ers. Why don't we call it the 1949ers after the first Scottish side to win the modern domestic treble? They're going to take us over. It's Souness replacing Jock Wallace all over again, kind of stuff. But a long way to go before we know it's verified. But with every passing day, the people who should be saying no, it's not happening, or pouring cold water on it, just don't. I know there's a lot of tabloids out there getting really excited about it. A lot of kind of podcasts and what have you that just want your likes and your follows, getting us all wound up. But it seems to be quite legitimate and very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it does seem that it's quite advanced. As I mentioned there, they have a kind of controlling stake in Leeds United, I believe. Now, that's quite interesting because I guess we would almost become part of a bit of a multi-club structure, assuming they maintain their interest in Leeds. And I wonder how you feel about that. As Rangers, we're kind of historically, we like to think of ourselves as one of the biggest institutions in club football, really. And how does that sit with you in terms of potentially being just one part of a multi-club structure? Is that something you think we could get on board with, or is that something that would concern you as just being one kind of club in a bigger potential structure?
It's quite. I mean, it's quite sobering about anybody who's still deluding themselves about Rangers' place, maybe Scottish football's place in the wider football world, in the wider football map. I feel as if it's potentially a kind of state of the art 21st century, the ideal ownership model that what's being proposed here, the money coming in from the 49ers enterprises. I think everybody's seen Kieran Maguire on the television this week, a well-known kind of football finance expert. He's been really good on this stuff. I've seen him in Sky, a few other places, talking about it, and he's saying how to own a franchise in the NFL, an American football franchise, you're looking at in $5 to $6 billion that's costing you. Whereas if they want to get into soccer, even setting up an expansion franchise in the MLS, it's all very franchise based in America. It's going to be like $250 million just to buy your way in, basically, to get a seat at the table, and that's before you buy players and get yourself a stadium. So you can see it's a kind of cheaper option for anybody in America who's interested, anyone in the USA who's interested in getting into association football. But that then it forces us to face up. I think we've always known a lot of Rangers fans, a lot of football fans in general, have a kind of passing interest, at least in American sports, and they'll realise how much how much more money is involved. It's a different league altogether, no pun intended, American sports. So that doesn't in itself bother us. It's just more about, as you're kind of saying or hinting at, is the character of your club or the sport itself going to be diluted by that kind of money coming in from parties who perhaps aren't that worried about the game itself? But the way American football works, NFL now, it's such it's so mercenary, it's so venal. It is a legitimate worry, but I think that the way I was over in Nashville just less than a year ago, and they had the Tennessee Titans, who at one point were the Houston Oilers. They just pass the franchises about every kind of few decades or so. You can just move to a different city. Baseball, etc., being the same thing. But I think the thing with this is they need to pay some sort of attention to the history of the club, because I think what they're trying to tap into, especially when it comes to American money, they want to cash in on the money that's available now through the Champions League, through the Europa League. But they're also, I think they're looking at the kind of eternal diasporas they've got in America. The thing that it's no the salad bowl, it is a salad bowl, it's no the melting pot. People over there are still really interested in what's going on in the home country. I remember being in New York in the early 2000s and bumped into an older couple who just started talking away to us, completely American as far as I was concerned. And so, oh yeah, he's from Scotland as well, she says, pointing to her husband. Well, when did you come over? 1790s. I mean, so his family's been over for since the 1790s, and he still sees himself as, Jock. He's probably nicknamed Jock or something like that. Okay, the new. So I don't know if they're trying to exploit that kind of market in America, then maybe they're going to have to pay some sort of basic respect to Rangers and what we think of ourselves. But it's a real worry. I think it's just a completely venal, completely mercenary operation. But it's also what we're needing, I think, at this point in time, if we're going to get to grips with Celtic and catch up with them eventually, make that extra leap. We've got as far as we can, since 2012. Kind of eternal second place. I think we're going to need that kind of cash injection, and this is probably the best model and the best source is available for that kind of cash. I think it will be interesting to see if, like you say, I think if you look at it as a kind of like Red Bull model, and you've got the City Football Group model as well.
Yeah.
Where you've got the Red Bull Leipzig, and you got a team, was it Bragantina, who I think Pedro Caixinha was manager of in Brazil, and ends up getting the Santos job. If they're looking for one club in each kind of, I think it was confederation, kind of big confederation, really, they were looking for City Group and Red Bull, but also they're not going to have more than one team from the same country and in football terms, obviously England's foreign to Scotland, country-wise or nationality-wise. They're going to treat us as a separate entity. Hopefully that's what the way it's going to go. We're going to get the respect there, and I think we're much more likely. It's obviously the Champions League, the continual European access we've got. They're trying to exploit the European money, maybe laying down some sort of foundations with a view to a European Super League coming about in the future. Perhaps even you get the whole FIFA Club World Cup thing going on in the summer. That's FIFA constantly trying to expand. The demographics might break down. The borders might break down, and it'll just be about having a foot in what actual support you've got. We've got support all over the world as well, so it would suit a kind of global game aspect to it. But I'm thinking maybe Leeds United have got much less chance of getting into the Champions League than Rangers have. So hopefully they'll prioritise us. But that's it's all spec just now. It's all on spec just now. It's all just the pie in the sky, strictly speaking, until it's all officially confirmed. But that is one of the things that would worry me, mate. That we just became some sort of feeder club. After the season tickets have been sold, suddenly realise, it was just we're just going to be getting a lot of Leeds players on loan.
Yeah, you mentioned there how kind of the mercenary nature of American sport. Now, these are businessmen coming in that have got no prior affiliation with Rangers, and that's kind of something alien to Rangers fans, really, since way back. We've always generally had owners that at least had an affiliation with Rangers. We knew they were, fans of the club. We can argue, the current custodians, we can argue all day about the job they've done, but the one thing that we do know is they are genuine Rangers supporters, and they have the best interest of the club at heart. Is this going to be a bit of a change in that these aren't dyed-in-the-wool Rangers fans? These don't have any association with Rangers, but is it one of those things where this is just modern football and this option's maybe a bit more palatable than being owned by, say, a nation state?
It's certainly more palatable. That's one thing. I actually found myself getting more excited about it than I thought I would, and I think it's because you've known. I think that option was always there. We're going to need some sort of cash injection. We're going to need some sort of big investment to help us bridge this final gap back to being on a level peg and on a regular basis with Celtic, even though we've reached Europe. We do much better in Europe than Celtic have of late being the last 22 years. So domestically to get us back to retaining titles, winning multiple titles, winning trebles and what have you, we're obviously going to have to make a kind of extra leap if we're going to do it before, I thought it maybe the 2030s, if we're going to do it kind of organically, kind of in a self-sustaining manner. And that always left the option open. I think Dave King had talked about it in one of his kind of mad pronouncements. Saudi Arabia, you can get that money for Saudi Arabia. And I don't. That's a lot of people talking recently. A lot of hypocrisy, a lot of people, Rangers supporters lobbying against Rangers recently. I'm not going back. I'm not renewing my season ticket. Let's bring the club down. Let's no buy merchandise. I find that completely crazy. That kind of attitude. So luckily we managed to avoid that long enough to remain a very viable prospect for these kind of business people. But I felt as if Saudi Arabian money was going to be a thing, and Qatari, United Arab Emirates, whatever. I don't want petrodollar, Gulf state, theocracy, the places where they behead folk and openly persecute gay people, etc. I don't want that. I would have real trouble then, maybe getting back to Ibrox. That would be the kind of thing that would really make me question me renewing my season ticket if it was that kind of thing was ever going to happen to us. So America was always too bad. The people that are in charge of America just now, but the country itself is a fantastic country, the States, and I would, the 49ers have been under control of the people that own them just now for a lot longer than Donald Trump's ever been in power or anything. So this was the preferred option. I don't think there's Rangers people, mate. I don't think there is dyed-in-the-wool kind of Rangers types who have that kind of money anymore to take us on like that. David Murray, even get Scottish investors, Scottish businessmen who are doing really well, as David Murray was when he took us on, back in 1988, late 88. But it's from Lawrence Malborough, who was based in Reno, Nevada, so it's not a new thing. He wasn't even a Rangers supporter at the time. He wasn't even a football fan as such. So he's kind of and worked it. That's we all know how it ended with David Murray, but up until that point, he gave me like every other dream possible came true. The players that played for us and the getting to a European final, a goal away for the Champions League final, stuff like that, and completing the redevelopment of the stadium. So that was good, but he's just not got the money to deal with it at all, and I don't think there's anybody else about. I think the guys that we've got in just now have done a fantastic job in keeping us ticking over since 2015, especially to get us to the point where we are an attractive prospect for these kind of guys. It's a worry. It is a worry because they will be completely venal. They're no messing about. There's no affection there for Rangers, but it's the only way we're going to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you're probably right there. Now, as you say, this is all kind of speculation. Nothing's done until paperwork's signed, I suppose. But regardless of whether this comes to fruition, is this now the right time for change at the top? Have the current board kind of taken us as far as they can?
It looks like it. It looks like it, and I don't mean that in a horrible kind of pitchfork and torches sort of way. And I would like to see them go out with a bit of respect for the fans, kind of hand over with maybe even a bit of affection. Like all businessmen, doesn't matter if they're Rangers men through and through or whatever. Businessmen are first and foremost businessmen, and I think we've been really lucky to get guys who just want to get their money back. They want to get their money back, be it through shares or whatever. But they've put a lot of money into the club. I think it's cost them a lot. It's very abusive at Rangers just now. It's kind of toxic at times. There's nothing. At the minute you stand up and try to help, people want to know why you're not helping more, and then you get blamed for the fact that we're not winning the pitch and all that. And infrastructurally, we're absolutely ravaged in 2012, and nobody was interested in taking us on then. Nobody wanted anything to do with it, so we needed fly-by nights, kind of almost gangster types, and that to come in and bridge the gap for a few years, and then we wrestled that's just a joke, by the way. I'm not saying him that was involved with Rangers at that time was a gangster. I don't want any coming back, but eventually we get the three bears and what have you, and the club is back with Rangers people. I think we've seen things dark enough to realise the difference between businessmen who couldn't care less about Rangers and just are going to rip us to pieces, and businessmen who want to see us do okay, who want to look after us. I think we've had that for the last kind of decade, most of that anyway. Still a few bits of grandstanding that for Dave King and what have you, but he brought in Gerrard and all that. So I'll never, I think we've actually been quite lucky to have guys who'll get us through that point in time, but they just don't have the money anymore. They can't do what needs to be done. And I was looking at, we're going to have to start kind of self-sustaining, looking after ourselves, some sort of organic kind of thing going on with our training facilities, and we're practically breeding our own players or whatever we're going to do to bridge that financial gap to Celtic. But that was going to take a few more years. So this is the only way we're going to get that cash injection that we need, Brian. Sorry, I'm going on a lot here, but it has been quite a momentous week, hasn't it?
Yeah, but no, I think you're right. I think this is realistically kind of the only way of bridging that gap. I think now is kind of the right time. One of the other kind of bits of news that came out during the week before the story broke about the takeover was Patrick Stewart did an interview with Rangers TV. I thought he said a couple of interesting things. He kind of again reiterated his support for the manager. I guess that kind of irks some fans because I think there's a kind of groundswell of opinion on Clement, especially after the Queen's Park defeat. So where do you stand on the manager? Does his position in any way tie in, do you think, to this whole takeover? Is there potential of kind of held on to Clement until the new owners come in and they decide who they want in charge, or do you think that's all kind of separate?
I think it gets quite kind of labyrinthine when you're thinking especially Patrick Stewart having been involved with American owners at Manchester United and all that. Oh, how deep does this go? Is that why we held on so long to get a new CEO? Was Patrick Stewart trying to convince John Gilligan, look, I can definitely get this American investment? Your brain's just, until it's all kind of officially sorted out, you can go mad with the trying to work out what's been going on behind the scenes. But for me, Clement, everybody's position, especially the playing side of things, will be up for grabs if there is the level of a new investment that we're looking for. I think when what's the guy called Parag Marat, he's the president of this 49ers Enterprises, and we don't even know how kind of closely associated. They're definitely. I mean, he got the 49ers to the Levi Stadium. He got them to the new stadium for Old Candlestick Park, which was the iconic venue for the 49ers when I was growing up in a baseball stadium. But he got them to this new Levi Stadium. So I don't know if we're going to go up there, maybe just get the sign outside. You get a W in front of the Rangers, in the front of the main stand. When we get to slip an L in there, we could be Wranglers, maybe Stadium or something. I just get the jean sponsorship or whatever. But the guy knows what he's doing. But I think it's Leeds United. I think he took them over just as they were being relegated, into the Championship 2 seasons ago, and immediately just get rid of half the players and kind of cut everything quite viciously, but then built it back up kind of instantly as well, to the point where they lost to the Championship playoff final by a single goal last season, and they're 2 points clear of Sheffield United. I think at the top of the Championship this season, looking good to come back up. But so he might go in, and Clermont might be one of the first kind of heads on the block. But if the whole American takeover thing wasn't happening, and as I say, it might not yet, I would be still back in Clermont, because I don't think he's been dealt a fair hand at all. And I think a lot of stuff he does really well, it's been overlooked. Queen's Park, it was a completely historically disastrous result. But the perverse thing about it was our record at home this season's phenomenal. Domestically, we've only dropped 2 points in the league, the United at home all season. Everybody else, League Cup games, be at home at Hampden or Ibrox, League Cup games, the league and all that, it's just win, 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 win. And when you don't get a home defeat domestically until February, you think early February, you think, well, that'd be fair enough. It just happens to be the worst home defeat in 150 years of Scottish club football for Rangers. Stuff like that, and that's kind of, to me, what should be happening, is the state of the club. That we've been trying to get a new CEO with a temporary chairman. John Bennett's not been out, and we didn't even have our own stadium at the beginning of the season, even though I think it was for the best of reasons. We're trying to fill all, but we're inventing jobs now as well. We're actually daring to talk about having a sporting director and stuff like that. We're just trying to get a CEO. It took us like 6 months or something at the beginning of the season. The place was kind of falling to pieces, basically, and Clermont keeps reiterating that every time he gets somebody gives him a bit of jip in a press conference about how bad things are for him. And I think he's quite right to point that out. I think that's why he got the contract extension. And John Bennett came out and openly said at the beginning of the season that the job was a lot more involved than Clermont had been given to expect, that we had basically deceived them. And I think that the guy's I think he genuinely wants to be the guy who does that job, who does that rebuild, and I think he has a genuine kind of affection for the club, despite the levels of abuse he gets. All deserved after the Queen's Park defeat. That was totally deserved. But I would be interested to see what he could do. I think with the European thing, what he's done for us in Europe has been phenomenal. He's got a phenomenal record away from home, not just this season, but last as well. Last season, hasn't lost a game, a European club match outside of Britain as Rangers manager, and it's all been against top-notch opponents as well. So I would be hanging on to him if that's what 49ers Enterprises wants to do. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see what they do, if they do indeed come in, to see whether they decide that Clermont's not really had a fair crack at it so far, so we'll give them the time with a bit more backing to try and turn things around on the field, or do they just decide we want our own man in there and we start from a clean slate? One of the other interesting things you kind of touched on it there that came out of the Patrick Stewart interview is that he confirmed that we're now recruiting for a sporting director. Now, previously a sporting director in Ross Wilson, and then it was decided that we didn't need one anymore because Michael Beale was going to do it all. And then we went down a kind of technical director with Niles Coppin. It just seems like we're going from one strategy to another, to then back to the other one, and we're also paying an outside consultancy firm to sort of tell us this, that we need a sporting director. I don't know what you think, but it just doesn't seem like the kind of smartest idea to be paying an outside consultant to tell us something that we kind of already know.
But that's the thing, Brian. This outside consultancy, was it what are they called again? Sportology or something like that. And
Yeah, I can't
apparently
remember the name
they're
exactly, but it's
connected
something like that. Yeah,
they're connected to 49ers. I don't know if it's San Francisco 49ers themselves or 49ers Enterprises. I think they've done
so
work in the past for the 49ers Enterprises. So that was, I feel as if it might have been more of a kind of, you're getting your house surveyed before putting it on the market kind of thing. They were just seeing what kind of state we were in, and maybe using the outside the internal review with external consultants as a ruse as a kind of cover to get that done. I was renting a flat a few years ago now, and it was a Retty, the letting agency, estate agents. And if you're renting a place, it gets inspected every 6 months. They come in and do inspection to make sure you're not burning the place down or anything. And then they phoned just maybe a couple of months after they'd done an inspection. They said, hey, there's going to be somebody coming to do a survey, Mr. Anderson. What's that about? Oh, no, it's fine. It's just a kind of routine thing, but you don't have to get involved in this. It's just they're just surveying it. It's just for our records. And I did think, that's a bit sus, but never mind. I'm making a cup of tea for the guy now when he comes in. A month later, the guy's like, is that a garage out the back? Is that part of the property? I'm like, aye, mate, I think, A month later, I get a phone call. Hey, Mr. Anderson, aye, we're selling the flat. You're going to have to get out. We're putting it up for sale. And I don't know if that's kind of what's happening. I just had to move. I had to move. They gave us 6 month notice, but we still had to move. Where else? Because the landlord was putting it up for sale. But I feel as if that's maybe what's going on. It's very, very reminiscent of that kind of personal memory. When Patrick Stewart's making all these comments on was it Wednesday afternoon or something? Then by Wednesday tea time, your flat's up for sale. We've got an interested buyer. I don't know. He's like trying to get folk to decorate the bedroom and stuff like that. Cover up that damp coming in there, to make us more. We don't know. I don't know. I feel as if the sporting director is something we should do, just because we stopped doing it. And I think that showed the way things were going at that point in time. The Rangers support. Look at what Ange's doing at Celtic. They're winning the treble because he brought all the players for Japan. Just let him. We'll do the same thing. Just let Michael Beale get the players in and all that. No, announce Slammers, announce Dessers. That we're dying for all these guys to sign. Announce Danilo, and we're really happy that it was they'd all worked with. They're all known by Michael Beale because he's your sporting director, and it turned out that wasn't working either. It's just, you've got to make sure you get the right people in so any kind of system, any setup works. But I think it's just because we stopped doing it. It's something we should do, and it's something a modern, progressive football club like ourselves that wants to get back to the very top should have. And I was scared of that, but I get, in fact, we're going to continue an internal review, said Patrick. The internal review will never stop. It's perpetual improvement that we're going for, all that's kind of best in class patter, which is fine as long as they're actually doing it. But I really, it looks like maybe the external consultants were up to something else.
Yeah, it does feel like it's all connected kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. On to kind of today's news is obviously Europa League draw was today. So Fenerbahce for us, what's your thoughts on that?
Raging, mate, absolutely raging. I've seen them before. I was gutted last night when 20 get beaten. I just the European. I want to see every team that's played in the European final. I want to see them all at Ibrox, and I've only got 20 odd to go, and 20 was one of them. And they get, what a game that was. They get picked out by Bodo Glimt. It was. I know it's going to be it's heavy duty. It's quite a glamorous tie. Really interesting. Fenerbahce were lucky to get in. They were lucky to go through to get into the round that was played last night. The last 16 knockout round, the kind of fake last 16 round that we bypassed by finishing 8th. They finished 24th. They finished basically a goal better off than Braga. I think it was Braga that went out. So Mourinho's kind of struggling there. The man who has won so many European trophies and what have you. He was struggling a wee bit with that one. We Fenerbahce having a bad time of it. But they've got some squad on them. It's kind of the opposite of Bodo Glimt, who was the other team we could have got in the draw at lunchtime today. Bodo Glimt are all kind of locally sourced, fresh-faced youngsters performing absolute miracles. They missed out in the top 8 by, I think were they ninth actually. I think they were the team that we kind of pipped to the 8th place, but they absolutely ravaged. Eventually, it took them to extra time, but the football they were playing, just all out energy. I was getting tired just watching them, the way they were playing against 20 in that game last night. So they're the kind of unknowns, the kind of Jim McLean, Dundee United, kind of hothousing of young local cheap talent up there working kind of miracles, whereas Fenerbahce, it's a bunch of old experienced guys, like Fred and who's the other, the Moroccan fella that used to be at Amrabat, that was at Manchester United. I think he's on loan for Fiorentina. You get Edin Dzeko, they get Dusan Tadic, all these guys from all over the world, really famous players. El Nassiri, who scored for Morocco in that semi-final, the quarter-final against Portugal in Qatar in 2022. He scored home and away against Anderlecht, who they pretty much gubbed over the 2 legs in that latest round to get them into that draw today. But they're all brilliant names, fantastic kind of CVs, but maybe a bit old, maybe a bit in the old side, a bit like Jose himself. But it's set up for a big glamorous tie, which is about all you can hope for, really.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned there, Mourinho's not having the best of times over there. I just say they didn't do particularly well in the group phase. You hopeful of progressing and getting past this one?
I would love to, mate. I would absolutely love to, because apart from anything else, we get Roma or Athletic Bilbao, 2 European finals. We get them in the quarterfinals. 2 European finalists who I haven't seen, so that would be a guaranteed hit if we get past it. We could see we could get Eintracht Frankfurt as well, and we could actually end up playing them again in the final. And Roma could play Lazio in the final as well. It's quite interesting when it's all pre-drawn. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one, maybe erring towards Rangers going out. It's the big thing is Fenerbahce are struggling. They're struggling the same way we're struggling. The guy that was a manager last season, he gets sacked after losing 1 league game all season, but they finished second to Galatasaray, who lost 2 league games but didn't draw as many games. So they lost the Super League last season. They went into the Champions League qualifiers, eventually get beaten penalties by Leo and dropped straight into the Conference League. Well, they only won 2 games, lost 2 and drew 4 of them in the same stages, the group stage, same group stage as us. But they're in that same situation again this season. I think they're maybe 5 or 6 points off the top behind Galatasaray, but they're 11 points clear of the team in 3rd place. So I don't know. I think Mourinho's under a bit of pressure. I think maybe they're prioritising the title. Fenerbahce have never played in a European final before. They got to the semi-finals of the Conference League, no, the Europa League back in 2013. But that's the furthest they've ever gone. They've maybe played about half a dozen times in the Europa League and then again the Champions League group stages. They don't have a great European history, and I don't know if it's all about winning the Turkish league this season. They're no great, but Mourinho has won it all. Won Champions League, 2 different teams and stuff like that. So he clearly knows what he's doing. But I don't know if they're prioritising that. I just feel with us, we Rangers, sorry, I'm going on too much here, but we Rangers, I feel as if there might be something to that thing of we like the pressure comes off when we play in Europe. Yeah. We're not expected to win. It's a bonus, and I've really enjoyed watching and reap the benefits of that kind of weird mindset over the last few years in Europe. But the pressure is now on Europe because it's the only thing we can win. Because we're so out of it in the league, there's no Scottish Cup. That's it. Europe is all we have. And I don't know. Clement does seem, whether I agree with it or not, he does seem like a dead man walking. And I don't know how much the players will believe in him. Maybe everybody will want to prove themselves because we've got these new owners potentially coming in. Or maybe it's a case of there's going to be regime change all over the place. The concentration goes. I don't know. It's like I could see us winning this tie. But as simultaneously I can see he's getting horsed in both legs. It's really strange. It's strange to try and find out what kind of mood Rangers are going to be in by the time they get into this game. I can't call it at all, mate.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one. I think we could be in for another classic Thursday night at Ibrox experience. I can see the stadium getting really up for this one. Just with that kind of being the only thing left to play for. And yeah, I can see it being a really good atmosphere at Ibrox. So looking forward to it. On to St Mirren tomorrow at Ibrox. How do we approach these remaining domestic games? At Rangers, you always need to win regardless of circumstances. But realistically, there's not a huge amount to play for in these domestic games. We're kind of so far behind that I don't think anyone's getting real expectations of catching Celtic. Should we just take this as an opportunity to give youth a chance, build for next season? It feels like we say this every year around this time.
Yeah.
But is this now just a case of building for next season?
Yeah, but I think the first team itself needs building for next season as well. I think if Clement is definitely on a project, same as Patrick Stewart was saying, it's all about the project, it's all about going forward, it's all about the future, thinking the long term. So I think that's the first team needs some proper schooling as well. It still needs to knit together to prove something. I don't know how many of these players are going to be here next season. I say the potential takeover throws it all up in the air. But normally speaking, I would think, no, we need to make sure the team stay focused because they do have a European campaign. You know, we're going to have to go to Turkey. We're going to have to go to Istanbul, the Asian side of Istanbul, and it's going to be a hell of an atmosphere. So I want them giving it their all in league games as well. I think last week against Hearts at Tynecastle, the team deserved to kind of punt it. The reaction was always going to be poor, even if they'd put in a fantastic performance against Hearts and won 5 or 6-0. It would be like, oh, aye, pressure's off, so you turn up now. They did, and they deserve that as well. The team and the manager, they need to be punished for what happened. For what happened against Queens Park. They need to give us a few offerings. They're not going to be able to boast about anything unless they win the actual Europa League itself. There's nothing for them to boast for this season. It's all about getting their heads down and kind of a continual apology from now until the end of the season. But I think maybe you're bringing in youth players to, let first team players rest ahead of European games, whatever. But I don't want us falling any further behind Celtic in the league. I don't want them winning the league title any earlier than they have to. That's a horrible position to be in. It never works like that. Once you realise you're out of it, a team just tends to fall away and subconsciously can't help trying to give their opponent the title as quickly as possible. But I feel as if we're going to have to give youth a chance anyway with injuries and what have you, Brian, and suspensions probably. But I feel as if the first team itself still has a long way to go, and Clement will still be trying to implement his long-term ideas, even if he's only going to be here for the short term.
Yeah, it was another injury confirmed by the manager at today's press conference. He kind of mentioned that Suter would be out for tomorrow's game. He did say it wasn't long-term, but is this a chance for us to finally get a look at Fernandez? We're not really seen too much of him. He's came on as a sub here and there. So there's a chance to get a bit of a look at him?
Normally I would say no. I would much rather we just went with Balogun's injured as well still, so I would go with Proper and Insiala, but Proper said his arse handed to him twice by St Mirren this season, so he was traumatised by Olasanya at Ibrox in October. We got through that one to win the game, but knowing that he was traumatised by Olasanya when he had to come on early doors for Balogun and on Boxing Day at Paisley, the St Mirren fans were lapping it up, the St Mirren players were lapping it up. And I think Proper he shat it again in that game. He couldn't handle it. I wouldn't say he just basically get eaten up by St Mirren again in that game. We end up losing that match. A lot of that to do maybe the team that the manager fielded, looking towards the Celtic game probably too much in those two games against St Mirren and Motherwell at Fir Park. But I'm also quite interested to see how Jack Butland gets on tomorrow, because I have a funny feeling that it's John Souttar's presence is what makes a difference in Jack Butland's performances. He almost admitted it last week, perhaps as a kind of boast or whatever, or an excuse that he tries to do too much at times to help the rest of the team. Now, he stepped up and took a penalty in the League Cup final, fantastic. That is balls out stuff. I love it. I love that attitude then. But I think he genuinely does try and come out and compensate for central defenders he doesn't really trust to the same extent when John Souttar's not playing, and John Souttar doesn't play a lot. He's also a good goal threat for us, Souttar. So it is a big miss. And I hope it is just short term. But I don't know. I think you probably got to start Proper tomorrow, and I would go with Insiala, who's playing well, and just try and keep it ticking along. They've actually been doing quite well in the league recently, even though that goes under the radar, but we've won our last 2 away games. I think we're going for 6 league wins in the trot just now. So I wouldn't be bringing in Fernandez at this point in time, but you never know how the manager's going to play it, Brian.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Will the news of the potential takeover lift the atmosphere, do you think, on Saturday?
I hope so. But I'm also kind of sickened by it as well. I've seen it social media this week. It's a personal thing as well. I don't want to be getting on to Rangers fans. I've got the things about Rangers asked. Like I'm saying, if it'd been Saudi Arabian money or Qatari money coming in, I would be considering whether to go back in a kind of political stance or whatever. But I see a lot of people just like completely hounding the current board and the manager and players, the abuse that's dished out to them. A lot of proclamations of "I'm no going back." I think there was a fellow online trying to organise a boycott of tomorrow's game. It's just as well it didn't kind of happen, because that's the kind of stuff. If you're coming in to survey a place to see if you're going to buy it over, and is that the director's box they're setting on fire? It is, mate. Yeah, I don't think I'll bother. I don't think we'll bother investing. We'll maybe go and see if Linfield did one or something like that. But I hope everybody is a bit more upbeat and what have you. But this talk of let's boycott the place, let's not renew our season tickets. What else are we going to do? If we didn't get this money coming in, we were just going to sit back and just let Celtic stretch even further. We had to hang in there, and make ourselves a big club. And the one thing I will say, I hope, it's been talked about a lot, but the fella who's in charge of Parag Marat, the fella who's in charge of 49ers Enterprises, is the guy who built the Levi's Stadium. He moved the 49ers, and they build stadiums quite off the cuff in the States, use them for 20 years, these 70,000 capacity monsters, and then just move on to a new one. I hope that's what they do for us, because that's the one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning. The one thing we need to make sure we get something sustainable, something long term out of this. If this does go ahead as kind of deeply and as excitingly as we hope it does, this investment, if we get that kind of level of investment, get at least 60,000, but I would go for 72,000. Get as big a stadium as possible out of it, and get a couple of European trophy memories that will sustain us as well and keep us at the forefront of other investors' minds as time goes on, even after the 49ers have done with us. But I just want to see people reacting to that, a bit of a buzz about the place, and a bit of an atmosphere going again tomorrow, because it's Rangers at home at 3:00 on a Saturday. Where else would you rather be, mate?
Yeah, definitely. And before we finish up, I'll take a score prediction if you've got one.
3-1 to Rangers.
I'll take
Yourself?
that all day long. I'll go for 3-0. I think we'll get a clean sheet. I'll take a clean sheet.
You're more staunch than me, mate. I've given a goal away straight away. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not giving any goals away in that. Not tomorrow, nah. Clean sheet. Right, I think we'll call it time there. All that's left me to do is thank my guest. Alex, thanks as always.
Absolute pleasure, Brian. Top hosting. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. We'll be back on Sunday evening. I think it's Scott, Ben and Ross that's on to review all the action from the weekend's match. Until next time, bye for now.